Glad to be here, debunking native claims of IUIC. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? And we are continuing on our onslaughts of this virtual blitz by the bodega. And of course, that's right. And we have um, just the usual suspects that you will find at the bodega coming through. And of course, I have my good friend Mr. Phil Fox in the building. What's going on, Phil?
What's up, family? Man, it's good to be here. Some trials and tribulations to get here, but we are here, fam. And shout out to all the other bodega bums in the building representing for Christ.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to my man Alfredo for doing this whole blitz thing, man. So yeah, man. So shout out to you, BK, for all the work you put in, especially today, and not just today, but all the prep that went into all this, man. So shout out to you, bro.
It was crazy. Thank you, man. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. So, what we'll be addressing is something that's near and dear to Mr. Phil Fox. We know that IUIC, like many of these One West camps, like to make the claim that the Native American is also part of the 12 tribes of Israel. And for those who don't know why this is something that's near and dear to Phil Fox, bro, can you let us know who you are and who you represent?
My name is Defeats the Enemy. I represent the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara tribes of North Dakota. My name, Defeats the Enemy, was given to me by my grandfather, who was a participant of one of the American wars. So he had the right to offer me that name and give me that name. That name, I actually I carry that very proud, because that name, according to my grandfather, was a name that normally is given to fighting men. I myself am not a fighting man. I was never in a war. I've never been in the military. But because he said of my spiritual profession, being a representative of our Lord, he said, I wake up and every day that my feet hit the floor, he said, I go to battle for the people. So he was able to give me that name. And yeah, so I represent the three affiliated tribes of North Dakota. And, a lot of this stuff that IUIC and a lot of Hebrew Israelites are trying to propagate is just further use and further oppression. And they don't see it that way, but it's further oppression of my people. And it's flat out exploitation of my people. The way other religious groups have used my people, our names, our story, and to simply push their own false narrative. So that's why it's important for me to get on these things and to talk about these things, especially when it comes to these false ideologies.
Absolutely. So Phil Fox is more than qualified to speak on these issues, right? So with that being said, this is actually a portion of one of the flyers that IUIC will put out. You can find this on their website, but when they're in the camps, when they're outside blitzing, they will pass these things out. Especially when they know they're in areas where there'll be a lot of Native Americans, right? And of course, they make the claim that Native Americans are the tribe of Gad, and this is supposed to be proof that Gad kept the commandments of the Most High. And they show these artifacts, right? You got those Lunas Decalogue stone from New Mexico. You got the 10 Commandments of stone, Newark, Ohio, and the Bat Creek stone of Tennessee. So we're going to look at these artifacts and see if they have been authenticated or not, right? Spoiler alert, they have not. All right.
Heavily not.
So we're going to look at the Decalogue stone inscription. This is what it looks like enhanced. And we're going to look at the Los Lunas Decalogue stone genuine or hoax by Mark Perkins and Titus Kennedy. The Los Lunas Decalogue stone, first made known to the public in 1936, is a carving of 9 lines of text into a large, flattened basalt surface connected to a massive boulder. The language of the inscription is Hebrew, and a translation of the text reveals that the inscription gives a summary form of the Ten Commandments from the Masoretic text of Exodus 22 to 17. The number of characters per line from top to bottom is as follows: 28, 21, 28, 21, 28, 29, 25, 25, 10. The first 3 lines are extremely close together, almost touching, while the final 6 have a space of about a letter's length in between each line. This is due either to a blatant error that will be discussed later, or to an adjustment by the inscriber so that the text would better fill the rock's face. The spacing between words and letters is somewhat inconsistent, although not to the point where it presents difficulty in discerning one word from another. The letters themselves are fairly uniform, but do reveal it was not a practiced hand that wrote them. The form of the script is not homogeneous. The author employed several scripts that are from several different time periods and at least 2 distinct languages. Okay? Looking at the stone and examining the form of the inscription, it is apparent that a scribe was not the author and the inscription was not well planned out. 2 distinct languages. All right? The scribe's use of what is known as a caret. This is an upside down V placed under a piece of text where something has been missed out, sometimes found in ancient Latin and Greek texts. Mind you, this is supposed to be ancient Hebrew.
Right.
Okay. It is not known in Hebrew until the Middle Ages. To make matters worse, it is above a dot that seems to be a full stop or period. Full stops did not exist in ancient Hebrew. Moreover, there are Greek letters of a slightly later date mixed in with the Hebrew. Right? So it's like, how is this an ancient stone when it's written in 2 different languages and they're using markers that were not used until the Middle Ages?
Right.
Phil Fox.
No, yeah, and that these are, I mean, this is just a classic example of, and here's a disclaimer, right? Is that some of the information that we're going to present, especially in these first couple examples, they may or may not have been meant to really be a negative thing, right? Especially coming up, because some folks were trying to implant these things into the record to sort of humanize Native Americans. Right. So because there was theology out there that was not dissimilar to some of the Hebrew Israelites, but just to simply use these things because they were debunked. It's so I just want to be fair with that and understanding that some of these things aren't always it's not always just a negative thing to try to get people to distracted or just create these falsehoods. But some people were actually trying to redeem Native peoples by importing some of these things into the quote unquote fossil record, or to the archaeological record. And so this type of thing, but that doesn't disqualify. That doesn't mean it's not disqualified and makes it a complete fabrication, because they are. And the specific examples is, I mean, most tribes throughout the Americas were language tribes. Not many tribes actually had a written language, or they would actually have the closest thing that they had were like some of the quote unquote civilized tribes that made first contact in the East had certain things like wampum belts and those types of things. So they were used to sort of communicate and keep track of things, and so those were like beads basically that were put on a belt, and those have so So as far as a written language per se, it's rare to find, and I don't really know of any, because even the Mayans in Central America and the Aztecs, um, they had sort of a European, or not a European, but a Egyptian-esque type, uh, draw, like the I forget what the term is, the little drawings, the pictographs, hieroglyphics, yeah. Yeah. So they had those types of things, and so you'd be hard pressed to find a written language when it comes to
Wow.
to any native tribe.
Wow. And well, brother, that's why you're here, to give us that insight, because we wouldn't know that. So that's wow. That's good to know. The next thing here, the next quote unquote artifact, in November of 1860, David Warwick of Newark, Ohio, found an inscribed stone in a burial mound about 10 miles 10 miles south of Newark. The stone is inscribed on all sides with a condensed version of the Ten Commandments or Decalogue in a peculiar form of post-exilic square Hebrew letters. The robed and bearded figure in the front is identified as Moses, and letters fanning over his head. The object itself was shaped like an ancient arch-type tablet of the law. In the center nested a bas-relief sculpture with clear late medieval attributes. Enclosed in yet another Hammurabi Jerusalemite arch-type shape of the law, running down the sides of the object between the inset sculpture and the outer edge, was an inscription expertly executed in a consolidated sans serif script design based on a late medieval Hebrew font. Right now, again, they claim that this is an ancient Hebrew discovery, but it's created in a script that was based on late medieval Hebrew. Incorporated into the consolidated font were Sinaitic, Hebraeo-Phoenician, and Napataean graphs. The object bore unmistakable evidence that it had been produced during the late medieval period and was probably it was a product of probably France or Spain. So this is not even indigenous Hebrews. Okay,
Right.
a short summary report as to date and probable place of manufacture was duly supplied, along with the very obvious markers as to both time and place. Upon reading the summary, the correspondent supplied more data. These aspects that show clear South Semitic influence indicate that there was a set commissioned by a Sephardic Jew, and as the set is clearly intended for use when traveling, probably by a merchant trader, from details on the sculpture, the most likely site of the place of production is Spain. If at the earliest range, the date 11th century CE, the set may have been produced in Carolina, in the later date range, 13th century CE. The set was possibly produced in Cordoba or Toledo during the time of Alfonso X of Castile. Nor can we ignore the possibility that the set was produced in France. Sephardic Jews handled the trade between the Holy Roman Empire and the Muslim world. So this is not an ancient artifact. In fact, this is something that was produced a lot. This is almost like, keychains. When you go to another place and you get
museum.
Right, it's like a little knickknack that you get in the museum that says I was here. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. You know what I mean? So it's like it's not ancient at all. Right.
And
yeah, go ahead, bro.
no, I was just gonna say, because they're trying to, especially where this particular piece was found. There's a lot of mysticism behind a lot of the mounds that you'll see, like in the Ohio's and so there's all these mystical mounds of that look like snakes and that look like all of these different decorative designs throughout the eastern part of the United States. So because that's shrouded in mystery, this type of thing sort of adds to that lore and these types of things. So again, the fact that it's pseudo does not, it's been proven. But it's these types of things that make it dangerous because people take it as factual, as if this is an actual piece of history, and they're trying to propagate and stand up this faulty doctrine based upon these things. And people aren't going to go out and really deal with the material. They're not going to go out and Google whether or not this thing is real or not, you know. And if you're showing it to these native communities or these folks who are, and to tell you the truth, they're not going to actual real native communities to try to propagate this stuff. They're going into some of the disconnected larger city group of native peoples that aren't necessarily plugged into their cultural centers, like the reservations where the elders are, where your tribal governments are located, and a lot of the tribal history is located on the reservations. You know, they'll show themselves going to a powwow, but a powwow is not the mecca of a cultural, some kind of cultural understanding. A powwow is literally just a block party. So you're going to show up at a block party and say, "Oh well, we had this deep spiritual thing." No, you're going to a block party to hang out and chill and be with your friends and whatever. That's what a powwow is. You know, so the fact that they think like, "Oh well, we went to this powwow and they greeted us and we did this," and no, that you just went to a block party. But if you showed up to a ceremony, Sundance or went to a longhouse in the South, or you went to any of these meaningful ceremonies, or you actually went to a cultural center like a reservation, then maybe I'll start hearing and listening. But the thing is that even at a powwow, I've seen a couple of videos where the MCs and the people who understood, and when these men were making their announcements, I can already see that they're already passing them off like these fools who don't know what they're talking about. because the thing that IUIC and many other religious groups make, the one of the biggest mistakes is that they think they have a very white supremacist view about Native American people, and they think that we don't know about our own spirituality. So what you're doing, IUIC, is you're making the same mistakes that the white European missionaries made by assuming that we have not a clue about our own cultural significance and our own life ways and life practices. And we understand and know, IUIC, who we are. I myself personally, I can go back 8 generations.
I've seen the pictures, y'all. I've seen the pictures.
Picture evidence. I know who people who don't carry last names, people that don't carry a surname and a last name. They don't carry that stuff. These people who are even beyond the documented records. So who do you know, IUIC? How far back can you go? But yet you want to tell me and my people who we are and what we are about, assuming, and that's why I say it's a white supremacist view, because that is the view that the European supremacists held, is that we were some lost people who didn't know anything about nothing, but yet we're the ones who knew and understood, and we saved their butts multiple times.
Woo.
But yet y'all are going to tell me.
That's fire.
It stops here, IUIC.
You got Phil Fox mad. Woo, that's fire right there, boy. That's good stuff. All right, next antique, so-called. The Bat Creek inscription is an inscribed stone tablet found by John W. Emmett on February 14, 1889. Listen, you see the dates to these things, right? These have been debunked almost a century ago. Right? But I'm going to be gracious. Maybe IUIC don't know that. They see these things. It backs up their claim. I'm not going to say they're lying. They're wrong, but I'm not going to say they're lying because they might not know. All right? So we're going to be gracious here. Between the years 1883 and 1889, Emmert was given a large number of assignments by the Smithsonian. Although he persistently sought to secure a permanent full-time post, he had so far failed to do so, perhaps in part because of his excessive fondness he is said to have had for the good corn whiskey. This is going bad already. For which his home state is renowned. The reliability of some of the conclusions reached in his earlier excavations was doubted by his employers, and his conduct in the Bat Creek affair has been questioned accordingly. So this dude's already suspect. All right. His work on the Bat Creek excavation was founded for the specific purpose of testing the hypothesis of Cyrus Thomas, Emmert's immediate superior in Washington. That much of the mound building in the eastern United States was done by ancestral Cherokees. Evidently, Emmett got himself a book containing drawings of ancient inscriptions, used it to forge the writing on the Bat Creek stone, pretended to find it, sealed in one of the mounds, and sent it to Thomas, who proclaimed it an early example of Cherokee syllabic or palatable confirmation of his own hypothesis about Eastern mound building. So this dude who loved the whiskey a bit too much was trying to land a permanent job, so he just created an artifact that he thought his superior would really enjoy because it would back up his superior's hypothesis. All right. Robert Mainford and Mary Quaz, archaeologists at the University of Arkansas, exposed the Bat Creek stone as a forgery. Mainford and Quaz discovered that the inscription, all right, now watch this, discovered that the inscription was copied from an illustration that appeared in a widely available book titled General History, Cyclopedia, and Dictionary of Freemasonry, published in 1870. 19 years before the finding of the stone. As for who the forger was, the obvious suspect was John Emmert, since he was alone when he dug the stone out of the mud. So much for those Hebrew sailors in ancient America. Right? And here's their actual report here. The Bat Creek stone revisited, a fraud exposed. Right? In the intervening years, a piece of evidence came to our attention that we believe proves conclusively that the Bat Creek stone is a fraud. The Bat Creek inscription, illustrated in Figure 2, appears in the General History, Cyclopedia, and Dictionary of Freemasonry. There could be little doubt that this was the source of the inscription and that the inscription was copied, albeit not particularly well, by the individual who forged the Bat Creek stone. So on top is the Bat Creek stone, and in the bottom is an actual copy of the page of this Freemasonry book that he used to inscribe the stone.
Wow.
There you go. So, yeah, as JP says, that's a cut. Yes, it is.
That's a cut.
That's a cut. Something got severed. Something got severed there. You know what I mean? It's a cut. So, Phil Fox, your thoughts?
I mean, there's tons. There's some other evidence that if you really wanted to try to propagate something, you could just do a little bit of research but you could tell that these guys, they don't know what they're dealing with. They don't understand anything about Native culture, about we've done several shows, Alfredo, talking about this, and the way that they talk about Native people, which I know we're going to get into some of that here in a sec, and how they choose to define Native people. Again, that shows me again that they're sold out to this, unknowingly sold out to this idea of white supremacy, because this is the same. They use the same rhetoric that the early Americans used to try to dehumanize us. But yet they go and turn around and try to say, hey, brother, we're for you, we're about you. But yet you're using the same type of verbiage, the same type of language, the same type of rhetoric to try to stand up your doctrine. But yet, again, these guys are just completely stomping on the names of my people, who we are, what we represented, and what we were really about. And so they absolutely don't understand.
Wash says, didn't Joseph Smith beat these guys by 50 years? Claiming Native Americans came to Americas during the Babylonian siege. In fact, a lot of these artifacts are actually from Mormons. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's why I say that's why that's why I talk about a lot of these religious groups, and that's what I'm implying is that there are IUIC and the Hebrew Israelites are just the Johnny come lately, because the Mormons have done this, and there's there's and also there's even just the church in general has used us to try to propagate and do certain things throughout this country. But that's another conversation. I don't want to get too far.
Right. No, that's true though. These are facts. So we titled this thing "Gad to be here," which is a pun, because IUIC believes that Gad, that Native Americans are the tribe of Gad. Gad was the seventh-born son of Jacob. His name means troop. The word Indian comes from the Latin word indio, meaning slave. Right. Well, let's look into that. In the King James Version, in Genesis 30:11, it says, "And Leah said, A troop cometh, and she called his name Gad." Right? And listen, if you love the King James Version, amen. You keep your King James Version. If that's all you read, you could be a solid Christian, do great things for the Lord, and you will receive paradise. All right? So I just want to put it out there. So, but, we do have better translations because we have more manuscripts now since 1611. Right? And in the New English translation, it says, Leah said, "How fortunate." So she named them Gad. Okay?
Right.
And these are footnotes. Genesis 30:11, the statement in the Kitab, the consonantal text, appears to mean literally with good fortune.
Right.
If one takes the initial bet as a preposition indicating accompaniments, the marginal reading means good fortune has arrived. Right? So in Genesis 3:11, the name Gad means good fortune.
Right.
But they like using the King James troop because troop, army, and again, to your point, Phil Fox, right? The aggressiveness, right? The toughness, they're kind of using some of that language that unfortunately these settlers use about the Indians, right? So
right, the Constitution used it, very well. The Constitution says, right after all men are created equal, 37 lines below that, it calls us merciless Indian savages. You know what I mean? So that's why I accuse them constantly of being white supremacists without even understanding it and knowing it.
Right. So we looking at we looked at Gad. Gad doesn't mean troop; it just means good fortune. Let's look at the word Indian, right? And this is from the online etymologically. I always mess up that word dictionary. Indian, inhabitant of India or South Asia, pertaining to India, right? 1300s. It's noun and adjective from the late Latin Indianus, from India, applied to the Aboriginal native inhabitants of the Americas from at least 1553 as a noun, 1610 as an adjective, reflecting Spanish and Portuguese use on the mistaken notion that America was the eastern end of Asia. It was also used occasionally 18th century, 19th century of inhabitants of the Philippines and the indigenous people of Australia and New Zealand. The Old English adjective was indisk, and indish was common in the 16th century. Red Indian. To distinguish the Native Americans from the inhabitants of India, it was first attested in 1831 in British English, but was not commonly used in North America. So where they getting this from if it's not, commonly used? Hugh Rawson from Wicked Words writes that Indian is unusual among ethnic terms for not having much pejorative value until comparatively recently.
Right.
So where are they getting this idea that Indian means slave?
Right.
We just went through the history of the word. Where are you getting slave from?
Not hard. Yeah, it's not hard at all.
Right. But yeah, Phil, I mean, the word Indian, when you use the term, when your people use the word Indian, what do you mean?
So I mean, well, first of all, most of us don't call each other Indians.
Wow. There you go.
We use it to, we'll call each other natives, another native tribe. He comes from another native tribe. You're Alfredo, you're my native brother. Because we understand and we know you're Taino.
Yes.
And so you're my native brother. You're not my Indian brother, because we don't call each other that, because we understood and we knew, like we already knew that Christopher Columbus was lost at sea. We already knew
Facts.
We knew that. So, I mean, any logical person understands and knows that the etymology of the word Indian, especially in the context of native people here in America, it was a mislabel. So it actually holds no value as to what it could potentially mean or not mean, because that's not who we are. That's not what we identify as, and that's not anything. It has nothing to pertain to us.
Wow.
And just like many of the names that are out there today that have been put on, like the word Sioux. The word Sioux was actually a French word that meant snake or slithers.
Wow.
They don't call themselves the Sioux people. They call themselves the Oyate. And so that's what they call themselves. So whenever they talk about their tribal nation, the quote unquote Sioux people would call themselves the Dakota Oyate or the Lakota Oyate. See, me myself, I'm a Hidatsa, and that's what my tribe is. That's my tribal affiliation. I come from 3 distinct tribes who are all located on one reservation, but we're all distinct, separate people: the Mandan, the Hidatsa, and the Arikara people. So there are terms and names that have been put on us, but that's not who we call ourselves. So the name Sioux actually doesn't mean anything to the Sioux people.
Wow.
It doesn't. They call themselves the Oyate. So that's another case in point.
Right. I mean, that definitely goes with your argument about, that even the terminology reeks of, a Western superiority, right? Just even though they know they messed up, they still call you that name anyway, right? That's deep. But so they actually try to use, scripture, a proof text, to try to back up the claim that someone like Mr. Phil Fox is from the tribe of Gad. First Chronicles 12:8. Again, this is something that this is a flyer. It's one of their flyers that they pass out.
Right.
And of the Gadites, they separated themselves unto David into the hold to the wilderness, men of might, men fit for battle, that they could handle shield and buckler, whose face were like faces of lions, war paint, and were as swift as the foals upon the mountains, known to be swift, elusive runners, and horse riders. Now, I'm reading a more modern part of that scripture. It says, from the Gadites, there went over to David at the stronghold in the wilderness, mighty and experienced warriors, expert with shield and spear, whose faces were like the faces of lions and were swift as gazelles upon the mountains. Nowhere in the original text do you see war paint.
Right.
They put that in the scripture. All right, let's go back. War paint, the parentheses. There's no parentheses there. Right? Swift, elusive, let me go back. Elusive runners and horse riders.
Right.
You don't see that in the text.
Yeah, I've even seen places where they have, some of the native Olympians like Jim Thorpe or Billy Mills, right? Where they'll put them, next to that verse. But here's the thing, though. So if we're such a superior, which yes, they're native people are athletic, absolutely. So are many other people groups.
Right.
But to simply say that because we've had two Olympians over the course of our history, like that's ridiculous. Because these are 2 people out of how many throughout the entire history of native people. And so the thing is yeah, we have superior athletes just like every other people group does. But the thing is just to simply say that we, because we have athletes, or because that within itself is racial, that is a stereotype. that is something that is just taking just simple, a simplistic oversimplification of who Native people are and what we're about, and slapping that on us to further your doctrine,
right,
without any regards to how we identify ourselves.
That's deep. That's like seeing a tall black person saying, "Hey, you must play basketball."
Right. You should be in the NBA. It's
Right,
like,
right.
I can't jump over a pencil. It's like, oh well, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
And
yeah,
also,
it's the same
again,
thing.
no, absolutely. And again, they seem to not understand or decide not to understand literary devices, right? So it says here,
Right.
whose faces were like the faces of lions. This is a metaphor. And again,
Right.
it's sad that we got to do this, but a metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which is not literally applicable.
Right.
So these guys weren't
Jesus.
actual lions. They didn't really look like, but their fierceness was like the lion. And of course, when they think of fierceness, they think Indians with war paint.
Right. And that's the
Right?
thing too, is
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
I come, again, this tells me that they have a very simplistic understanding and a very surface level of history understanding. Because listen, not every tribe was a war tribe.
Uh-oh.
I come from a tribe that were horticulturists at our heart. We were the ones. We were what made us one of the biggest trading meccas in our region, was because we had stable crop systems. We understood crop rotation. We understood, the nutrients in the soil were needed. We understood a lot of these things as far as, what it took to have a sustainable crop and society. We were what was called semi-nomadic. We had two separate camps within my people. We had a winter camp and a summer camp. The winter camp was down in the valley, away from the harsh winds, and our summer camp was in the rich open area where our crops could grow. And so not every tribe was like the Lakota Sioux, who had fierce warriors, or the Comanche. Not every tribe was like that. So again, the simplistic understanding tells me that they have no idea about who Native people are truly.
So they're actually propagating a stereotype then.
Again,
Wow.
yes, they're propagating a massive stereotype about Native peoples being able to hold the shield and the spear and the bow and arrow and all that stuff. And not all of us had the same kind of weapons either, fam. Like again, another stereotype. Like not all people had clubs and war clubs and different styles of war clubs. They had different styles of weaponry, and some had, and again, in a lot of these verses, you see, different metals being used. And a bulk of Native people, a bulk of these people groups didn't have metallurgy at the time. Most of them still use stone tools and stone weapons. So again, that's where I am confused about some of the verses and the things that they use.
Wow, that's deep. I think this is something you put up, right?
Yeah.
Phil?
So
Yeah.
So it says the Native Americans are strong people by any bloodline and a chosen people according to the Holy Bible. This is off of their flyer. So I cited their flyer at the bottom of this, and so this is the same flyer that we've been using. So so it goes on as Deuteronomy 33:20. In Gad, he said, "Blessed be he that enlargeth Gad; he dwelleth as a lion." And then they put in quotes fierce warriors, and teareth the arm. Again, stereotype, a blood pact or an oath, which we've talked about, I think, on your channel before, Alfredo. And with the crown of feathers, a royal crown of feathers or a war bonnet. So let's go to the next slide, Alfredo. So here's what it actually says in the King James without all their rhetoric, right? So And of Gad he said, Blessed is he that enlargeth Gad, he dwelleth as a lion, and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. So next slide.
All right, hold on. All right, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, we're good. So here's what the crown of the head is talking about here, right? So in the first is the crown of the head. It's talking the literal crown of the head, the top of the head. But the reason why I highlighted the second part is that's where they actually cites it in Deuteronomy 33:20, i.e., the entire area of the head. So again, they're inserting their own ideology. So the literal meaning of this is the head, not some sort of, next slide. Oh, other way. So not the war bonnet.
Wow.
They're literally not talking about any kind of war bonnet. And we didn't even touch this other blood pack BS, bull crap, because that's laughable. Again, I've never heard of that. I've never heard a tribe that does some kind of blood pact, except for when I was 5 years old in Boy Scouts. So maybe these guys are reliving their Boy Scout days. I don't know. but I mean, again, this type of stuff is what Madden. It just angers me. Is that they try to propagate this type of stuff and try to use something like the war bonnet, right? The war bonnet is a sacred thing amongst my people. It's a thing of honor. It's something that it did make me angry when Andre 3000 was wearing it in his Hey Ya video. These things aren't just fashion items. A person wears a war bonnet only when they're being or in a place of honor. And just to simply propagate it, to stand up your faulty ideology, angers me, because you, IUIC, have not a clue as to what the war bonnet is, stands, and represents. You don't have a clue, unlearned ones, about what it is for and what it represents. So that type of thing angers me 100%. And so this here, they were kind enough to give me a date. I'm glad they gave me a date that the Native American people, my people, came from their supposed from the Israel and all of these things. So they said the heads of the people of the tribes of Ephraim, Puerto Rico, and Manasseh, Cuba, and Gad, me, okay, amongst the 10 tribes of Israel, migrated to the Americas sometimes after the Assyrian captivity, circa 722 BC. Isn't that nice? Thanks for the date, IUIC.
Wow.
It's time to stomp on that.
All right.
It's time to stomp on that.
Let's get to it.
So there were two discoveries, main discoveries. USR1, whose DNA, or not the DNA, but the dating dates back to 11,400 before present. 11,400 years ago, found in modern day Alaska. And there was my own personal relative, Anzac 1.
Wow.
Who is related to me.
Oh, wow.
Directly.
Wow.
I have the same DNA type that as Anzac 1. And Anzac 1 was found near the Crow Reservation, the modern day Crow Reservation in modern Montana in northern United States. Anzac 1 is dated to 12,800 before present.
Wow.
And if you want receipts, IUIC, I got receipts. I got tons. There's studies. There's a few studies. There's some. I paid for them. I'll even gladly give them to you, IUIC. I'll even pay for your own copy if you don't think that I'm honest enough to give you the original copy. I'll pay for it for you.
Wow.
And so on this chart, you can see ANZIC 1 and USR 1. Those two are in the upper Western Hemisphere. Below, going down the west coast of North and South America, those are other related to USR and ANZIC 1. Those are all relations and other people that were found, and those are the dates.
Wow.
So thank you, IUIC, for giving us the date of when.
This blows that date out the water, bro. Oh my gosh.
But here's the thing. There goes your chart, IUIC. Your chart just went bye-bye. Because now you said you have put the date out there along with Ephraim and Gad and Manasseh, and there's a whole slug of other folks that are implied in your 12 tribes chart. But guess what? This debunks every single one of them.
Wow.
So thanks for the date. I appreciate the date. And I was glad to see it when I was digging through your research.
Dag, Phil. Killing these dudes. Oh my gosh.
So
that was
so
wow.
Yeah. So I mean, that's because I mean you know, you can say it's pseudo, you can say whatever, but again, look at your propaganda, and let's try to have even balances here. So you want to try to criticize the stuff that I say, but I have actual verified, peer-reviewed articles and evidence to show the stuff that we've presented here. But yet you want to hold your stuff up and say, oh, no, but there's all kinds of pseudo behind it. Cognitive dissonance, fam. So come on.
I mean, I think the main thing that I feel like you really got across is the irony, right? That they're so against the white man, but it's like, but you're following in the white man's footsteps when it comes to dealing with your people.
Right.
Yeah, you're using white people's forgeries.
Yeah.
Right. White people's forgeries, you know,
techniques.
Right. Names.
Their rhetoric. Yeah, you're using all of their same. You're even using the same playbook. Roadmap, fam.
It's the same playbook.
Right. It's the same playbook.
Wow.
And you know, it angers me and it saddens me at the same time, because again, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, that I don't hate these people.
Right.
I don't hate anybody, but what I see is I see them as the mission field. And so, but the thing that does put a fire in me is that these people who have not a clue about who they are trying to tell me, and I'm not trying to come off as prideful with this, because I know who I am. Guess what, IUIC? My people, we have our own creation story. Look at all of the masses of people in Indian country, and look at the narrative of the creation stories. And there's a crazy coincidence that there's this narrative that seems to fit even within the biblical narrative. There's all of these things that are even embedded within the native lore. There's flood narratives. There's the serpent narrative within a lot of the creation stories, even within our clan stories. Fam, IUIC, what you know about clan stories? You don't know squat about clan stories. I know my clan story. That's how deep we can get. I was raised on the reservation with my people and understand and know who I am. Oof. But yet you want to come and tell me about who I am, and you don't even know who you are. You can loosely string maybe 2 or 3 verses together and then try to exegete or eisegete your way through it. But the thing is that I know who I am, where I'm from. Even I can even identify a cousin that's 12,700 years old.
Crazy.
I'm done.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That. Oh man, Phil came out swinging today, ladies and gentlemen. He was not playing games, man. And again, we just see a lack of consideration and research. You know, if you're going to try to evangelize a people group, it's probably best for you to really know what that people group is about, as opposed to just, you know, having a broad brush that you've borrowed from the white man. You know what I mean? So it's like it's not a good look, guys. It's not a good look. So we're gonna wrap it up here. We're gonna do one more show before we're done. And Phil, man, this was amazing. Any last words before we out of here, bro?
No, you know, I see. I mean, I know I know it was passionate, but again, I don't hate you. I love y'all, and I welcome a conversation for real. Like and again, I'm not looking for screaming matches. I'm not looking to, to try to lob these, these fake bombs at each other. You know what I mean? Like, we could talk for real. You know what I mean? So, but family, I hope y'all were encouraged and y'all got something to throw in your arsenal as well. Amen. So thank you, Alfredo, for doing this, man.
Thank you, sir. And with that, Mr. Phil Fox and BK signing off. Peace.